Hello and welcome everyone to today's episode. Today we are going to be covering the following topics. All the timestamps are in the description below. And I hope you enjoy today's episode. So let's get started on these topics. How do you join two datasets using LINQ? So here we have two datasets, one for person and one for city. And as you can see here, the person has a city ID. So how do we get the city ID and match it in city ID there and get the city name? So this is quite easy to do in SQL, but how would you do this in C# using LINQ? You do this by using the join method. So let's explore the syntax and understand what it's trying to do. So you put your first dataset here, which is people. So what you want to do is join the people. So you use the join method against the cities dataset. So here we've got a list which contains cities and we've got a list of people which contains the following people. So that's your first dataset, which is list of people. And then you've got cities here. Then you have to use the lambda operator and specify which foreign key you want to use. So the outer join that you want, the first foreign key join is person against the city ID. So you want to join it on that field. Then the next one is your primary key. So that's city dataset, and we want to use the city ID. And again, you need to use the lambda operator here. And then you've got the two tables, person and city. But those cannot give you an object because it's a mix of properties from city, like city ID, city name, and person has ID, name, and city ID. So you cannot just use them. What you need to do is create a new anonymous object out of the two objects here. And that new anonymous object will actually contain a person name, which will be person.name, and city name, which will be city.name, because they're coming from the original objects that we created. Now these are just classes. So as you can see, this is a city class and it's an ID and city name. And then you've got the person class here, which is ID, name, and city ID. So then once you have this anonymous object, you can just treat it like any other object and loop through the items and print the person name and city name. So in SQL, the equivalent would be joining two tables here to give you a new table essentially with different columns or fields, and the same thing is happening. So just to recap, this is your first table, this is your second table, and you want to join on the foreign key of city ID in the person table against the primary key of the city table. And if I run this program, so what you can see is this is an inner join. So we have Alice lives in New York, Bob lives in Los Angeles, and notice there's no match for Charlie, as you can see, because his city ID 3 does not exist within the second dataset, which is actually on 2 and 4, so 3 is missing. So hence in the output, you do not see Charlie. So this is an equivalent of an inner join in SQL. How do you do left join using LINQ in C#? So here we have a dataset of people. So this is our variable people, and it will have a list of objects that are of type person. So this type person class will have an ID field, name, and we have pets here. So here the pets variable, and it's going to be a pet, and this pet is going to have a name and an owner ID. So how do you link in the owner ID over here? And notice that some owners do not have a pet. For example, Alice here has two pets, Fluffy and Rex, while Bob has one pet called Goldie, and Charlie, whose ID is 3, doesn't have any pets at all. So how do you deal with the situation where you want to show all 3 people, but those with pets, you also want to show them? So it's a left join in SQL that you would do this by. So in C#, what you can do is you can use the GroupJoin method of LINQ. And here what we're supplying is the first dataset. So this is the people dataset, and then pets is your second dataset. In C#, this is known as a collection. And then we get the key from the person. So here, for example, this is a person. So Alice, for example, would have ID 01. So you can see here, that's what we are getting, person.id. And then we want to join that up against the pet. So pet.owner.id. This is the foreign key. So that's the key over here. And then what we're doing is we are keeping the person object as it is, but we are creating a new person pets object, and we're passing it to this lambda expression. And this is going to create a new anonymous object. And from the person object, what we want to do is pull the names. So this is going to show all the names, Alice, Bob, Charlie, without regards to Charlie not having any pets. He will still show up in that list. But as soon as we use the persons.pets, we are going to select the pet name and convert that to a list. For Charlie, this will be an empty list, so there won't be anything for him. So what we do next is, in our loop, when we are trying trying to work out, does Charlie have any pets? What will happen is we use the entry. So here we're looping through the results first, and we've got the entry variable. So the results would basically contain the person name and the pets. Now pets in this instance would be a list. So when we say per record that we're looping through, we will get the following: the person name and pets. And what we'll do is here, so per person, we are checking if they have any pets. So is there anything in the list? That's what the any method returns, because it's acting on the list, because pets is the list. So what we're doing here is we are checking if the value of this is true, that there are records, then we want to concatenate the pet names. Otherwise, we just want to show no pets. And then we are just going to print the person name and pet list, which is a string here, which is just a concatenation of pets list over here. So if I run this code, so you can see the output. And as you can see, Alice has Fluffy and Rex, Bob has Goldie, but Charlie has no pets. So this is how you would do the left join in C# using the group join method. Your first dataset would be here, second dataset, the key that you want to join on, which dataset you want to take forward, the new dataset, person, pets, create an anonymous object out of it, use the toList method here if you've got multiple records, and then if you want to display the outputs, concatenate it using the string.join method here. Previously explained the group join here. So you can see the group join syntax can be quite confusing for newcomers. So let's try and understand how this actually works and what it's trying to do. So here we have a list of people. These people have pets. Some people will have more than one pet, such as Alice, while others will only have one pet. And of course, some will not have any pets. So how do you join this data together and show which people have pets and which don't? And you can use the join, group join method here. So this people is the outer join. So this what sits in the outer join, and what it says is for Alice, go and find all the pets. So here, this is the inner join now. So if you imagine, this is the outer, so that's the people, and within people, you have pets. So for example, Alice has 2 pets, but Bob, that's him, and inside him, there is only one pet that he has. And then on the outer layer, here's Charlie, and inside there is nothing because he doesn't have any pets over here. So this is the outer join. So what it's going to do is loop through Alice, Bob, Charlie individually. So first it will loop through Alice, and then look to see if Alice over here matches the owner ID within the inner join here. So the key is matched. If it matches, it puts that data here. Now this is something we have decided to call person pets, but you can call it anything. Basically, the group join method here, its output in effect is person pets. And you also need the person here because the person pets only takes data from the secondary inner join here. So this is the inner layer, inner box, and it only takes the properties name and owner from there. That's why then we pass that to a lambda operator and take the person's name, and from the pets, now notice here person pets, we've decided to call it person pets, but internally C# will create that new object for you and give it whichever name that you select here. So this name is selected, and then from that we can extract the name of the pet and convert it to a list. So for Alice, she will have 2 pets, so we convert that into a list. So I hope this clarifies what improves your understanding of this code. And as you can see, this is the output that we will get. So you can see here that Alice over here has 2 pets, Fluffy and Rex, Bob's called Goldie, while Charlie has no pets. So this has the effect of a left join, basically bring back all the people here, and then if they have any pets, show them pets as well. Let's have a deep dive into group join. So here we have the following collection. So collection of people with Alice, Bob, Charlie, and of these people, some of them own a pet, but some don't. For example, Charlie doesn't own any pets, but Bob here owns 1, and Alice owns 2. So here's Alice, and you can see Alice has 2 pets. So using the group join, we can use people, that's our outer collection or join of data that we want, and then we've got inner. So what do we mean by inner collection and outer collection, and how does C# actually work with this? So let's have a look at this. So here you've got people as the outer collection and pets at the inner, and then you can see the relevant keys. So this will be the outer key, and this will be the inner key. And by that, what we mean is the inner collection will be converted into a dictionary by C#. So it will convert all the pets. So here ID 1 owner will have Fluffy and Rex. So you can see the pets are now being converted into a list. Goldie is ID number 2 of the owner. So that's the owner ID, and owner ID 2 only has 1 pet, while owner ID 1 has 2. So that's why it stores them as a list. And then when you loop through the outer, so let's say Alice was the first person, but we're looping through. So you can see here, Alice is the first person. She has 2 pets. So what it will do is they will do a lookup of that person ID, Alice, against this. Then what it will return out of that dictionary is Fluffy and Rex because they are at ID number 1. And then simply what it will pass through is that item that we have, person, pets. So it will just have the owner ID and the pets as a list. This is how generally it will work. So you look up at the dictionary. So notice here, this is using a lot of generics. So you would get your result, right? Notice here, the outer, inner, this is the outer key, this is the inner key. So that's what we saw here. So when we are working through this, so this is our outer collection, this is our inner collection, this is our outer key, this is our inner key. So those are converted into generics, and you can see them here, outer, inner, outer key, inner key. And what will happen is those inner items are converted into a dictionary and the key is used. So this is the inner key, that's the foreign key we had. So that's the owner ID. And then it will add them to the dictionary over here if the item doesn't already exist with that key. So if, for example, owner ID 1 already exists, then we can simply add the relevant item. If not, we will create a new list. And then when it comes to finding who owns which pet, this loop is run, and the outer key selection, we are looping through the outer key. So those are the different people that we have. So these are the Alice, Bob, and Charlie. So we loop through them. And notice here, we are checking against the inner group if the lookup contains the key of the outer item. So here is the key of the outer item. If it does, then we bring that data back. Otherwise, we just return an empty inner. And then using the yield keyword, we just return the results back. And this is what's happening behind the scenes. And this is the syntax. That's why we use the syntax. So you can see this is the outer loop, this is the inner loop, and then we've got the outer key, we've got the inner key, and then we get our new data set over here. And then from that data set, we can simply select name and also the pets that belong to that person. So generally, I've tried to make this simpler to understand using words that may help you understand. I think sometimes it is just good to understanding of what is actually happening behind the scenes with the group join. So you are then better able to remember the syntax over here. So I think the key takeaway is this is the outer collection, this is the inner collection, this is the outer key, this is the inner key. So the data you have, these are the people and what pets do they own. Some of them can own multiple pets. So the relationship is one to many. Here is another way of using GroupJoin with SelectMany. So let's explain this syntax. So what this will do is you have the following people and the cities they belong to. So you can see Alice here belongs to city 1, which is New York, Bob belongs to city 2, which is Los Angeles. But Charlie belongs to city 3, but there is no city 3 in the second data set. So what do we do is using GroupJoin. So we want to loop through the outer list, which is people. So this would be Alice, Bob, and Charlie. And then we want to use the inner loop or inner collection, which is city. So see here, we've got New York and Los Angeles. And we want to use the person.city ID as our outer key. And here city ID as our inner collection key that links the city ID. So what we want to do is that will give us our outer collection and it will create a new collection, which we have decided to call city group. And what that will basically do is simply say that person with ID 1 has city of New York and person with ID 2 has city of Los Angeles. So basically very similar to what we have here, but in reverse, it will be grouped by the person, not by the city ID. And then once those groups arrive, what we want to do is we want to flatten them using SelectMany. So that means, for example, if Alice belonged to 2 cities, then we're able to print them as separate rows. So here, what we're doing is we've got this temp variable. This temp variable is basically the city group and the person. And here you can see city group is available here. So it has come from there to down here. And in this temp variable, which we have decided to call temp, but you can call it anything you want. And notice that we're checking if default, if empty. So this will give a null if we do not get a matching city. So if we didn't get a matching city out of this key match, then we will simply get a null output here. And then we are going to use that. So the output of this is going to be the city. It could be null. And then here we're just passing in the temp variable again. And then this lambda operation, what it will do is this is going to be an anonymous object, which is basically going to take in person name. And it's going to notice here we are accessing temp.person. So this person fed into this temp variable here and is accessible via that. And we're going to pull their name. And for city, now city comes from here and it's generated here. We're just checking if it is null. Then what we want is, if it is not null, then we want the city name. Otherwise, we want the output to be no city. And then we just simply print the results over here. So if I run this code, so you can see here, this is the output that we get, which is Alice lives in New York and we've got Bob who lives in Los Angeles, but notice here Charlie has no city. I hope this helps you understand that GroupJoin with SelectMany and when it might be useful. So when should you use GroupJoin versus GroupJoin plus a SelectMany method? So let's have a look at our code here. And here what you can see is a list of people, and these people have pets. So here you can see owner 1, for example, has 2 pets. So that's Alice, and owner 2, which is Bob, has 1 pet, but Charlie has no pets. So what we want to do is we want to have an output like this, which is Alice. It's shown like here, grouped list per person. So we want to see Alice's pet, Fluffy Spike, Bob's pet, Gordy, and no pets for Charlie. The other method we could use is using the SelectMany. So here what we're doing is if a person has 2 pets, then we want to print 2 rows for them. And if Bob has only 1 pet, then only 1 row, and no pets, then you just get the person's name and a message to say no pets. So here the aim is 1 row per person pet. So what we want is 1 row per person with a list of pets versus GroupJoin plus SelectMany, which allows for 1 row per person pet pair. So GroupJoin will allow us one grouped output. When you want to flatten the rows, then you want to use GroupJoin plus SelectMany. So the output that you would get is like this. So let's examine the code. So the GroupJoin, what it will do is it will take the outer selection, which is people, joining against the inner selection of pets on the following 2 keys, and give us an output of person and person's pets. And from the person object, we want to get the name, and from the person pets, we want to convert that to a list. So this would give us our GroupJoin without the use of SelectMany. And then we're just going to loop through, print the results using the join method. But with SelectMany, what we want to do is pretty much the same thing. So you can see GroupJoin stays pretty much the same, but the SelectMany after the GroupJoin method is going to create a new anonymous object, and for each row of the data coming into this temp variable, we want to print the person's name, and if they do not have any pets, then we want to print no pets. So this is the output that we're getting. Basically, it's per row. So it's creating 2 rows for Alice, whereas previously using only GroupJoin, it doesn't do that. So here, and the results are stored in flat result, and then we are just simply looping through and printing out the output. So you can see here, this is different to what we did here. We had to add some logic within our for each loop, but by using SelectMany, we are doing part of that logic up here, and then the for each becomes simpler. We're just basically looping through the results here. Let us understand the difference between select and SelectMany. So think of the scenario. We have 3 kids here, and of these 3 kids, kid 1 has 2 toys, kid 2 has 1 toy, kid 3 has 2 toys. So what you're seeing is for each kid, so this is a list. So we have a list here defined, and notice the commas here separating the list items. So within each item, there is another list, and that list is a list of toys. So you can imagine 3 kids holding their own bag, and within their bag, they have their toys. So when we use the select method, what that does is returns a list of toy lists. So for example, if I run this code here, you can see what's happening. So what we are getting here is each kid is just simply passing out their bag, and in that bag are their toys. So we're just getting this output over here. So we can see kid 1, their bag have been passed, their bag have been passed, and their bag have been passed. But what I really wanted was for each of the kids to take out the toys from their bag and give them to me. So that's where SelectMany method comes in. The syntax is pretty much the same. So you can see we're just using kid toys, which we use kid toys there. And rather than select, we're just going to change it to SelectMany, and the rest of the code stays the same. So now we don't even need to write a for each loop. We can basically write a string join method and use the variable here. So here, what you get is a simple list where the kids have taken out their toys and just given you the individual toys rather than their bags. So they haven't given you a list of lists. Essentially, they have given you individual toys by taking them out. So that's what SelectMany allows us to do. It allows us to flatten the lists that we get. So you can imagine select basically keeps the bags. So it just basically gives us bag 1 over here, bag 2, while SelectMany, what it does is it opens the bags and mix the content. So we actually get the individual items out of it rather than giving us a bag each time from each kid. So I hope this clarifies SelectMany. and select and its potential use. So let's take a look at this example where we have 3 kids here, John, Emma, and Mark. And what we want to do is print the toys that they have. So the toys are lists. So this is a nested object. So we have a list of kids. This is a class. So the class is down here. The class has name and toys here, and toys is a list. So what we want to do is we want to use the select method and print the kid's name and the toys that they have. So the syntax is using the lambda operator here. We want the input to be the individual kid and get the kid's name and their toys. So here, then we have a loop that loops through that and gets their name. So entry is the individual kid now. So it's enumerable. So think of it like a list. So we now have a list there, and we then also get the toys, which at this point is a list. And that's why we use string.join method to change that list into a concatenated, comma separated list of items, string of items. So once we have that, we can just print that. But there is an alternative way of doing this, which is SelectMany. So what this would do is, again, the syntax you can see is pretty much the same. But at this point, after the lambda operator, rather than creating a new anonymous object, what we're doing is we have another select embedded in here. And this select will pass the toy. So now notice here we are referring to toys. So each kid has toys, which is a list, and we're doing a select on that, and we are selecting that individual toy, creating a new anonymous object out of it, adding the kid's name from here. That's the variable kid, and toy is just equal to toy. So this toy here is coming from here, and that's the new object. So it has 2 properties, which is the name and of course toy, the capital T versus a lowercase t, which is referring to this variable here. And then once we have that, this is going to create a sequence of these objects, or you can think of them like a list, but they're not like list, they're enumerable, which is a sequence. And we're just going to loop through that over here. And for each entry, we're going to print the name and the toy. So at this point, what we end up with is a simplified object versus this object, which leaves the toys as a list. So think of it like this. You have a kid passing you their bag, and in the bag here are their toys, and each kid is passing you their own bag, and they'll have their toys in that bag as shown here. So you get given 3 bags. So then you have to here extract that out with the string.join. But what's happening with this code over here and over here is we are getting 1 bag and all the toys belonging to different kids are here. But with the toy, it actually has a tag. So there's a small tag here next to this toy, next to this toy, and next to this toy to say this toy belongs to this kid. So that's why we have this name element over here. So I hope this explains the difference between SelectMany. SelectMany allows you to flatten any hierarchies within your objects and make them appear as like a simple sequence of objects. So this is just the anonymous type we are creating here. So you can think of it like this. Select is basically giving you bags here. So 1 bag here, 1 bag here. While SelectMany, what it does is it extracts that information for you and just gives you the individual items. Let us understand 3 very important methods of LINQ: any, all, and select. So let's have a look at what data we have. So here we are creating a list of a person. What is a person? That's a class. So here we have a class. It only has 2 properties, which is name and age. And we are creating Alice, who is going to be 25. And Alice is added to this variable called people, other list item. And then we are creating Bob, who is 17. And then we are creating Charlie, who is 30. So what any will do here is it returns a true or a false. So it returns a Boolean. So are there any adults in our people variable? So what we're going to check is this variable. So we're just passing individually each item to our lambda operator, and then we're going to check if the age of that person is over 18. Now, as soon as one of these returns true, because we want any adult who is over 18, then we will get the value back here as true. So as soon as the first match is found. In this case, we have Alice, who is 25. So it will basically stop here because there's no point checking the rest of the objects here. Then we have all. Now, what all does is it ensures that everyone is over 18. So it expects Alice, Bob, and Charlie to be over 18. Now we of course know that Bob is not. So what will happen is it will execute this, and as soon as find Bob with 17, there is no further point in checking Charlie because that condition has been met. So it will return a false here. Then finally we have contains, and what contains will do is it will check if Bob exists by checking it against the name property. So again, as soon as it finds Bob, it will return true. So here it will go through Alice, and then it will go to Bob, and as soon as Bob is found, it won't bother checking Charlie. It will return true or false here. So if I run this code here, so as you can see, are there any adults that are over 18? So here, what we saw was, yes, there are definitely Alice's over 18. Are all of them adults? This is not true because Bob is 17. Does list contain Bob? That returns true because Bob does exist here. So that returns a true. So in summary, any method, at least one item matches the condition we've specified and returns true or false. All will ensure all conditions match. So this is important. And again, it will return true or false. Contains, check if specific value exists in a collection, but as soon as one match is found, and it will return true. So these three methods are really useful LINQ methods that you should use. But remember, they only return true or false.